So how do you provide for that, say, couple wanting a comfortable retirement of $55,000? Well, there's three sources of income in retirement. Superannuation that you have saved over your working life, the government age pension that we just talked about, and your own personal savings. Now, if you were to live off your own personal savings and not rely on the government at all, or potentially the superannuation as well, there's a simple rule of how much capital you would need to fund that lifestyle, and it's just a 12 times rule. So if you wanted $50,000 to live on each year, then multiply that by 12, it gives $600,000, and it's just a broad rule of thumb that you would need approximately $600,000 in capital to provide $50,000 of income over the long term. That's not how things generally work out, though, because if you've got assets of less than, I think it's $1,032,500 as a couple, you're likely to get access to at least a part pension. So that helps support or fund your retirement and not be totally reliant on your own resources. Now, just to give you an indication of how the age pension works, there's an assets test and an incomes test, and whatever the impact is of those, the one that says that you get the lower pension is the one that is used, and most people are generally limited by the assets test. So they've got assets higher than, for a couple, assets higher than, we've got them actually around the wrong way. This is the assets test and this is the income test. So for a full pension for a couple, if you've got assets less than $273,000, then you'll get the full age pension. And now the full age pension for a couple, as we mentioned earlier, is just under $30,000. Now, if you're a single, if you've got assets less than $192,500, then you'll get the full age pension of just under $20,000. Now, there's also the age pension cuts out if you've got assets as a couple over $1,032,500, or as a single just under $700,000. Now, the income test, ignore these headings, we've got them around the wrong way. From an income test perspective, if you're earning income less than $152 per fortnight as a single, or $268 per fortnight as a couple, you'll get the full age pension, and then you'll get a part pension if you're below these thresholds here as well. That's per annum. You'll get the full a part pension if you're below the $43,238 as a single, or $66,000 as a couple. Another thing to be really wary of is that the pension age, the age at which you can access the age pension, is changing. It's increasing over time. So depending on what your date of birth is here, so born before 1935, a female, it's age 60. For a male, it's 65 years of age. That's the age at which you can access the age pension. Up until those that are born after 1st of January 1957, for both men and women, it's age 67, so you need to factor that into your situation as well. Now, just to give you an example of what you need to live on in retirement, we've got an example of Joe and Mary, who are both 65 years of age. They're retired, they own their own home, and it's got no mortgage associated with it. We're assuming a modest lifestyle that they're living with expenditure of $32,000 per annum. And Joe, he has $120,000 in his super, and Mary has $50,000. We're assuming some returns on that superannuation money of 4.6%, which is pretty conservative. It's what the cash option did in Christian Super this year, and is generally what the cash option has provided over the longer term. So it's conservatively invested in super, and we're saying that if there's any surplus over at the end of the month, we'll save those funds into a bank account. And that's exactly what happens, because this red line here in this graph represents the expenditure of $32,000. It goes up over time because of inflation. So it starts at, this is the income side of the graph, so it starts at $32,000 here, and by the time Joe is 97 years of age, the equivalent of $32,000 is about $100,000. But what's happening here is that these green lines being higher than the red line, it means we're actually have more income than we need. We're getting more than $32,000 per annum because we're getting the whole age pension of nearly $30,000, and then we're just drawing a small amount from our superannuation each year. And therefore, this blue line at the back shows that our assets continue to grow over time. That's a pretty good scenario, but it's also on the modest lifestyle, which a lot of people prefer not to be living on. Another scenario, well, just have a look in that scenario we just talked through with Joe and Mary living on $32,000 per annum. This is just where the money is coming from. So you can see this again is the $32,000 we're spending. Now this line here, this purple bar, is what we're drawing from our superannuation. So it's really just about $6,000 in the first year, and it ranges between about 6 and a bit over 10 throughout their lifetime. And most of it, this blue line here, is representing the age pension. So the age pension is providing most of their income in retirement. There's this orange bit up the top here, which is basically we're saying that because they're earning more than they're spending, we're putting that into a bank account, and over time that bank account ends up earning some money, and so that's that orange bit over here. So it just gives you a sense of where your retirement income can be provided from, or where it's going to come from. But this is a different scenario. Say, for example, you didn't want the modest retirement, you wanted the comfortable retirement lifestyle, which is $55,000 per annum. Now, we've assumed the same super, we've assumed the same returns, but in this case, the $55,000 per annum is not being met here. We can see that their requirements are not being met, because by the time Joe turns 71 years of age, there's a big gap here because they've used all of their assets, and by the time they're 71, they're basically living off the age pension, and there's a shortfall. So that's basically giving you a couple of different scenarios. Now let's have a look at whether, what would happen if they had $500,000 of super and wanted to live on $55,000 per annum, that comfortable retirement. So we're saying that Joe's got $450 in super and Mary's got $50,000 in super. Same return again, 4.5%, and this time they're actually living, or their assets are lasting to their life expectancy of 87 years of age. So up until that point in time, so they're eating into their assets, they're meeting their income requirement, but at the age of 87, that's where they run out of money, and they then have to live off the age pension. I guess you can, if you own your own home, potentially sell that home and move into a retirement village or something along those lines. So there are ways around providing for your needs at that point in time. Example 4 is really looking at what would happen if I didn't have my money just sitting in cash, my super money sitting in cash, but if I actually invested in a portfolio that provided not 4.6% return, but 6% return. So getting a little bit higher return, taking a little bit more risk, but getting a bit more higher return with our investments, and seeing what happens then. And if you have a look at the graph, basically it stretches our assets out a little bit further to the point that their assets run out when Joe is 92 years of age. So 5 years beyond their life expectancy. So you can see how all these factors play into how much you need to support your retirement. $55,000 and $55,000 expenditure a year and $500,000 in super will last someone retiring in today until their life expectancy. But if you want to last a little bit further, then you can do things like take a little bit more risk with your investments, with the idea that over the long term you'll get a high level of return. But I can hear you all saying that's not what's happened in the last few years, and I certainly acknowledge that. Just one other example is relating to a question that I had from Peter, who said, how much do I need to retire at 55 years of age? So this means that if somebody is currently 55 years of age and wanting to retire, they need to support themselves between 55 up to 67 years of age. And so they're fully reliant on those funds. And what actually happens, and I need to change this figure here, because their actual age at which they can get access to the age pension is age 67. It's not 65 because they're born after 1st of July 1957. So what happens? They need to provide for their own income for that 12-year period, and that means that they need an extra $300,000 to provide for their income in retirement. Retire at 55, you've got 800. You need about 800,000 in super, and we're still assuming a higher level of return. If you're going to assume a 4.5% level of return, you would need even more money than $800,000 to retire. And this is a key point that I want to, pass on to you, that if you retire before your pension age, you need to be fully self-sufficient, fully pay for your own retirement, and that's where it can eat into your assets. So if you look on this chart here, they've basically started with $800,000 at age 55, and then between then and 67, they've used $300,000 of their assets, and then they slow down a bit in terms of eating into their assets because they're starting to use, be partially supported by the government age pension.